Okay, good morning again. Going to spend some time right now focusing on specifically what it is that you need to do in order to start your territory going, to get it going. I remember when I first started out, it was like, okay, well, I'm populating my database, all right, I'm going online, I'm finding, practices and things like that. And oh yeah, I found some candidates, so I'm building the candidates in my database as well as the practices and the medical offices. So I'm doing both sides, and I was like, well, when do I go live with this? When do I actually, start reaching out? Do I have enough practices in my database? Do I have enough candidates and PAs and APRNs in my database? That was something that I remember spending a lot of time trying to, get together. And I think a lot of that was more sort of like hesitancy on my part because I didn't know when it was right to start. I thought maybe I was going to fail, but really a lot of it hinged on how was I going to sort of match candidates with jobs. And that, I think, has been taken care of. That I figured that part out because that is the crux of this position, is making it so that you get these positions to be seen, these job postings to be seen by people who are interested in them, and you're playing matchmaker. And that was something where, that was the missing piece. I figured out, okay, I can find out where these practices are. Okay, I got the website here, I'll put it in the database. Oh, here's the candidates. Okay, oh, she's here. Okay, great. Put it in the database. Now I'm building my database on both sides. But when did I go live? So it was really, like I said, all about making sure that I could live up to the bargain that I had agreed to with my clients. That if they said to me, John, okay, we need this person. We need, a physician assistant or a nurse practitioner with this experience, blah, 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 that I could go ahead and I could find that. And it's interesting because the first time that it happened, and again, the way I did it back then was very different than how I do it now. But the first time that this actually happened, I think I filled the position by just dumb luck. And at that time, I was using a different billing method. It was the percentage of the first year salary model, which, if I haven't already discussed this, essentially it's very different than what we do now. We use a flat rate fee now. So it's the flat rate of $6,000. In some cases, it will be $7,000 depending on the market. And so that was very controllable. It's like, having your cell phone bill always be a flat $100 or a flat $150 no matter how many calls you make. It's different in the sense that a percentage of the first year salary, if the candidate is offered $90,000, then you get a certain percentage of that. If the practice wants to offer the candidate $100,000, well, they have to make sure that they're compensating a percentage that is different, or the same percentage, but more now back to the recruiter. So if it was 10% on 90,000 would be 9,000, 10% on 100,000 would be 10,000. So it always makes that practice more hesitant to use that billing model, and so that's why I switched over to the flat rate fee. And I found that I think I was a little ahead of the curve because that percentage of the first year salary model is sort of going by the wayside, and the flat fee has become really something that is in vogue. It's being used a lot. So anyway, so the way that I filled that position, that initial position, was really by dumb luck. It happened from a different website I don't even use now to get the posting out there, and the candidate came from Kansas, of all places, to come to Connecticut. Long story, but that part of it is taken care of. We now have a way to get these positions out to be seen by interested people who are looking. I've tweaked it, I've refined it, so that is not a problem. What I would recommend moving forward for anybody that is trying to get their territory off the ground as quickly as possible is to spend time doing the following. Look online for two things. You want to find jobs. Obviously, those are your warm leads, the ones that you see on Indeed and on Simply Hired. the ones you see on Monster and Career Builder and any student society sites that are within your state based on where those nurse practitioner and physician assistant programs are. So you want to spend time, preferably off hours, looking for those types of warm leads. The second thing that I would recommend doing is, as you're doing that, like even at night, you spend maybe an hour here or there going online, doing that search that we had talked about in a previous tutorial, if you haven't already watched it, about how to go on and find these prospective clients. You would go and you just go online and find, internal medicine search in, whatever city, in whatever state, and up comes a list of practices. Put them into your database, tickle them to call the next day, and that's how you call those more cold leads, I would say. So to recap, how you get your territory off the ground as quickly as possible is to do those two things. Find the jobs from Indeed, the ones that clients are actually looking for. They're looking for people, and they are because they posted the job, but maybe it hasn't been seen or they haven't been getting the right candidates. And two, go out on your own to look online. Again, go on to google.com, search, internal medicine or cardiology or dermatology. Find the practices that are within your territory and call them in the manner that we had discussed in a previous tutorial about how to call into offices. Those are the two things that I would recommend in every case to get your territory off the ground. If you, let's ask this question. What happens with the candidate side in your database? Well, that is something that I wouldn't worry too much about right now. The candidates will come. You're not going to be doing a lot of active recruiting, meaning you're not going to be sourcing your database, your personal database, for candidates, because the candidates that you will expect to get for the clients that you've signed up will come from people that will apply online that have seen our job postings. So in that way, you will build your database. Now, I plan on having a way to get all of these registered candidates into each of your databases going forward. It might take some time, so don't worry about trying to find candidates. Worry about finding those clients and prospective clients, and spend a lot of time making those calls into those offices, and that's how you're going to get your territory off the ground as quickly as possible. What happens if they say, hey, great, we'd love to start working with you? Well, then you present them the contract, the agreement, and then what we do is we write the job position, okay? Let me take a step back and say that I like to always tell the client this when they say, well, John, how does it work? How does the process work? And I'll say, thank you for asking. Essentially what I like to do, prospective client, is I like to spend about 5 or 10 minutes getting to talking to my client, getting to know exactly what they're looking for. So by the time I find candidates for the position, I've already presented them with the information, all the particulars about this job. So by the time they get in to speak to you, it's really more about the personality of this individual. Will their personality be something, and will it be able to mesh with the other personalities in your practice? It isn't spending so much time about the minutia of the position, and I've talked about this before. Will they have to work weekends? Will they have to work nights? No. We'll have all of that taken care of ahead of time. So before I actually start looking for a position, or I'm sorry, a candidate, because the client will say, well, John, okay, I need a nurse practitioner, go. Internal med, see it, and it's like, well, whoa, hold on a second, because I need to know a lot more. In their mind, that's all they think that needs to be known. We need a nurse practitioner, here's the location, I'm the person you need to talk to, that's it. Well, no. Tell me about the experience that you need. Do you need a newer grad? Will you be considering a newer grad, or do you need someone with a very specific skill set, a number of clinical years? Would you prefer a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant? Will this individual be working autonomously? Will they have to work nights or weekends? What's the salary range? Are there medical benefits offered? What about CME? Are you offering a 401k? Is there a contribution? For those benefits, Is there any contribution on the part of the practice? How much PTO will they be getting? What are their exact roles and responsibilities within the practice? Will they be working with other nurse practitioners and physician assistants? There's a lot of questions that need to be asked. Oh, I mean, I can go on, but are there multiple sites where this person will be working at? So you see that there are a lot of particulars about each position that the client is not thinking about, but the candidate, that the candidate is going to be asking you those questions. And the last thing, the thing that you never want to do is create a situation where you're going back and forth, the client, the candidate, to get all these questions answered. It is going to save you so much time to be able to ask these questions up front, present the information to the candidate so they have all of that information, and then either qualify that person on the basis of, John, listen, that sounds great. It's exactly what I'm looking for. I don't mind a couple Saturdays here and there. I'm glad you mentioned it. Great. So you can confidently go back to the client and say, hey, I've got a position, or I've got a candidate for you. Her name is Christina Larson. Here she is. She doesn't mind working weekends. She's already doing it now. All of that. And what you can feel confident about is knowing that when you send that individual, there is very little that is going to prevent them from being seriously considered for the position. You know that you covered all your bases. You're not worrying, oh no, I forgot to ask about whether she can work weekends or some nights, or a longer, weekend or a longer night rather. No, you know that it's covered. And so that just increases your chances and the percentage that you will close this and fill it with a candidate. Furthermore, you don't want to be sending a candidate over to a client and then find out that there's one piece of information or something in there that isn't compatible, that they can't work weekends, they can't work nights, or they need medical benefits because they're the primary provider for their family, and hey, the practice doesn't offer benefits. That's also a very big one, is that I've had a couple instances every now and then, probably two or one, I would say maybe one or two out of every 10 positions where the practice doesn't offer benefits. And if you don't ask that question ahead of time, you basically could potentially send a candidate to a position that's a total waste of time, where they say, John, I came back from this interview and they're not even offering medical benefits. I'm the primary supporter. I provide the benefits for my family, my husband, my 2 kids, my wife, my 2 kids, whatever. And you look like an idiot to the candidate. You look like an idiot to the client. You wasted people's time. It's just no bueno in many respects. So spend that time initially with the client. You always tell them, client, all I'm looking for is about 5-10 minutes of your time, just so that we can, I can ask all these questions up front so I don't have to come back to you with any additional questions. You know that anytime I send a candidate to you, you know that they're fully apprised of all the particulars of this position. That's the way I said it right there, was a very good way of saying it. And yeah, the minimization of ping-ponging candidates back and forth and going back between the client and the candidate, the client and the candidate, it is just a colossal waste of time. It will prevent you from doing so much other stuff, because you're not, you can't expect everyone to operate as quickly as you do and get back to you as quickly as you would like for them to get back to you. So that's how you handle that portion of, what happens when you actually sign up a prospective client and they become a client. You go, you talk to them, you say, okay, client, tell me about this job. And you ask them very specific questions, and we'll get into that later in a different tutorial. But now you can feel confident that you've gotten your first position. You're going to take all that information that you get from the client. We're going to put it into a job posting. We're going to put it online. And much like casting a net out to sea, we're going to, cast it out there onto the internet and wait to pull back in all of our candidates. And it's pretty much an exact metaphor for for how this works, because that's it. I mean, we throw it out there and we wait for people to come back in terms of being this a reactive type of recruitment method. So when you get those clients, don't be afraid to move full forward, as quickly as possible, because you can feel confident that you're going to get candidates, coming back. And if a client ever says to you, well, John, how much time is this going to take? How long? Well, client, it depends. I mean, it depends on what your needs are. We have to sort of evaluate that first to see what it is that you're looking for. That's how you answer that question. So again, just to recap, how do you get your business off the ground, your territory off the ground? It is by going out, finding those cold and warm leads that we discussed, then spending time when you actually get a client that is interested to talk to them about the particulars of their position. We write that job posting, which we covered in a different tutorial. You go out, you throw it out there on the internet, and you wait for something to come back.